All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome to the Party Chat People's podcast. As always, I'm Mikey, and I'm joined by Zavi, Matt Plus, and Matt Negative. And we're here to talk about some video game, actually, just FF7 Remake.
Okay.
We are going to do a full breakdown of the game. Basically, our general impressions, what we thought of the gameplay, what we thought of the music, what we thought of the story, how it compares to the original, and how we think Square Enix is going to handle the future of this remake in every sense of the word. So without further ado, let's just get started. So I think the first sort of thing we're going to tackle is gameplay. And how did we all feel about, the changes in gameplay, its comparison to the original, upgrading the turn-based combat to having something that's a little bit more action-oriented, but still sort of retaining some of the turn-based aspects.
You mean aside from feeling like a child again?
Yeah, right.
I honestly, I did kind of, I had flashbacks to when I was a teenager, like first getting my PS2 and playing Kingdom Hearts for the first time.
Yeah.
Didn't the guy who designed that system, I believe, designed or helped design this one as well?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it feels like, for me, it feels like the evolution of that system of Kingdom Hearts 2, because I feel like Kingdom Hearts 2 is, to tangent just a bit, is like one of the best Japanese RPG action games.
Yeah.
Integrates a lot of the traditional stats from JRPGs of the past really well, and so this is kind of like a natural evolution of that.
Yeah.
Especially just the fluidity of it.
I would sort of argue or actually add on to you that it's funny, I've been seeing a lot of the comparisons at the combat being directly compared to FF15, but when I play this game I actually see a lot more FF13, and I feel like it's a really nice mix between FF13 and Kingdom Hearts, like original Kingdom Hearts, just because of the restraint. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 3, Sora's like half god or something, but he's flying all over the place, like materializing things out of nothing. But I think,
he still can't kiss the girl.
He still can't kiss the girl. But I think that as far as having, the action and mixed menu-based combat, having that slow down so that you're selecting your magic or items instead of being a little bit more frantic like the Kingdom Hearts series or a more traditional action RPG is, I think it really gives you that tactical and strategical sort of sense that's sort of missing from some of these other games.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'd give a shout out to the man who's credited as the battle plan director, Yasushi Matsumura.
Thank you.
Okay. What is his? Have you seen his pedigree? What is he? What was?
I have no idea. I'm just I can Google him if you guys want. But yeah, the combat is some solid shit. It's I don't have a ton to say about like the details, except because on some sense it feels like we've been on this journey of like figuring out how to marry those things with Square Enix for a long time. And I didn't like FF15, I didn't like FF12, and yet I can still see the seeds of how that comes into this a little bit.
They really built off of those for it.
So it's actually kind of interesting. Like some of what I didn't like about those games, they dropped, which, good. Yay.
Yeah. I think I've been really happy to see the return of the more strategic elements to this sort of action combat. The reason I see a lot of the guts from 13 in the sense of the paradigms of like, I have to have a tank, or I have to have someone that's magic heavy, or I have to have someone who's really focused on like, hard hitting attacks. And
it's relatively early on, which I like, is it's relatively early on in the game that the game starts to like put you in situations where it's like, do not think that you're going to get away with mashing buttons here, spamming potions here, because that was FF15 in a nutshell for me. Was just like whenever anything hard happened, I didn't do anything strategic at all. I just spammed potions. That was stupid and lame and boring.
Another thing that I think that happens once you go into hard mode, that they really stress the strategy, is that easy materia or materia that makes your life easy. you don't get doubles of those. So there are no doubles of magnify materia. You only have one person that can cure everyone. You have 2 elemental materia. So there's only going to be 2 people in your party that really deal, extensive weakness
That's a good
damage.
example, because I don't think that in this game that mastering a materia spawns a new materia.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, that's one thing that they.
And that's why you're stuck with a single magnify as you said.
Yeah. And I think that sort of, reinforces my 13 comparison of like when you switched to the Ravager paradigm, which was like the magic, the healer build, you can only do certain things as that, or your magic attack would be boosted. Whereas now, like, because of the both there only being one of each types of materia, or it being, really works with that specific character, like you had to have a healer, or you had to make a choice of, okay, do I want this to be, all barrier or all heal, or do I want this attack to hit all, this fire attack to hit all enemies or something?
It really forces you to like limit your strategy,
Yeah,
you only have a few things that will work.
Yeah.
And it shows good design prowess, which like Square Enix has been on and off again about like their design of their combat in terms of like, because at a basic level, like both for 12 and 15 in particular, my experience is that there's very obvious dominant strategies that make the game boring.
Yeah.
And in this game, that's not true, which is good.
They've actually, tackled one of the criticisms of the original FF7, which was that every character was basically the same. The materia system was very expansive, but
that's
in this
very
game,
true.
Aerith, look at me, old FF7. Aerith is, specific to her character. Barrett has specific abilities, Cloud has specific abilities, and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
And you earn those abilities through weapons and I do enjoy the restraint.
Elements of like Final Fantasy IX with the gems where you earn the AP and it gave you the skill. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
And then also, the limits in the weapon system of like, each character has 6 weapons. There is an all-rounder weapon. There is a weapon that if you know you're going against enemies that are weak to magic, that you pick that one. There's a weapon where that has the highest, physical attack. You pick that one. Up until the end of the game, I was switching back and forth between different weapons.
Even those weapons have like, you can make them better in a particular stat. So you can make them like crazy high in like magic.
So that's actually an interesting thing, because one of my problems with this game, as I've explored hard mode a little bit, and I need to preface everything by saying this game is great, period. But I do think that it's vital that we have conversations about depth versus complexity generally. And this game has a problem, in my experience, playing 2 chapters of hard mode, where it has a complexity that is not mined through its normal play experience. And then when you start playing hard, it feels like they just beat you over the head with like, this is a whole different game now. And that's okay, because if you just want to play for the story, you can, and you can auto upgrade weapons, for example. I'm someone who, if there is not a good incentive to pay attention to min-maxing, I don't give a shit. And one of my decisions throughout my play on normal was that weapon upgrading was boring and unnecessary. And so I didn't do it personally. I just didn't care.
But you didn't engage in the system, or you didn't upgrade your weapon?
I auto upgraded it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right. Just making sure.
That's what I mean. And I can see how that complexity might become a key factor,
especially
in hard mode, but it's actually just distracting in normal from my experience.
So what I will say, I sort of disagree with you in 2 ways. The first way is that I've like I said, I think out of all of us,
locations on
I don't care. He's here for me. He's here for me.
You're pointing at Tutti from my perspective.
So the first thing is that hard mode, I actually like. It's fine. I'm getting through it. Like there's some parts that are more frustrating than others, but it's sort of, I don't like what they did in the sense of they've turned this game into Persona, where the only thing mostly hard for about 85% of the game
figure out the weakness and exploit the fuck out of it.
No. Is that you just can't recover your MP.
Oh
so
yeah, that sucks.
every
the thing
chapter,
is,
you basically
that's
have
really
to,
the biggest difficulty of hard
I'd like
mode.
to like slightly like give my experience of chapter 1 hard mode.
One second. I just wanted to finish the second point. So that, which only creates this like, okay, well, I've played normal and this is great. Now I have all these spells. If in one battle I can obliterate my MP and not have anything left for the rest of the chapter. And then I actually lost my train of thought, but you can go ahead. I'll figure it out.
So the my experience with chapter 1 was interesting because most of the fights in chapter 1 are not hard. Not hard on hard either. And then the Scorpion didn't feel right. I'm not saying like this is universal or whatever. I'm saying it did not feel to me like anything that they had explained or built up to or tutorialized in a satisfying fashion at all. So like the fact that they tell you like you don't have items and right, like there's some serious ramifications for that fact. And it's fair to say this is a second playthrough, this is hard mode, and if you don't want to play, then don't play. But I found normal mode combat for the first half to be relatively boring, actually. Like I just wanted to get through things and get more story for the most part. The back half of my normal playthrough, I was like, actually, this feels engaging and interesting. Cool. And I think that they need to develop some good middle ground as we move on to game 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever the fuck they're gonna do. However many they're gonna do.
Parts.
Because they're gonna make $1 billion if they can.
It should be 3. I don't want to talk about. I don't know. No 2, 3. No 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it's gonna be 3.
Well, I say that because
parts,
they
Square.
are saying it might be more than 3 parts, dude. So news stories, they're like, 6. I don't know. Anyway, so when I got to that Scorpion, it was just like, you didn't teach me the ramifications of this. This is just frustrating, right? So the next time that I fought the Scorpion was the next day, and I immediately like, okay, let's try the Scorpion again. And I forgot to like redo my materia so that both of them have raise, and so that I like rethink it, right? And the tricky thing is, the experience of reconfiguring your materia for each fight is somewhere between good and overwhelming. And I don't love it.
It's bad. It's not good at all.
So there's things that there's things that they need to like nail for the next one, like configurations, right? Because Final Fantasy 13, that was a huge part of what was that system called again?
Paradigm shift,
right? That was a big part of what Paradigm
They basically
Shift
took all of that away by just saying, here's an archetype, here's a job.
Yeah,
you get all the associated sort of attacks.
They simplified the shit out of it. Everyone does the logical stuff when they're there. So in a sense, I guess what I'm getting at is they need to pull more of that in for the future games, because you can do all sorts of interesting things with the combat if you do that, but it would also kind of address this problem, because it also addresses a problem that's universal in RPGs, which is you go into a fight with a loadout, right? But if it's your first time doing a fight, and you know that your loadout sucks, that's frustrating and boring and stupid. And your alternative is what? Like go to the menu and retry the battle, I guess, but that feels like it breaks immersion. So it's an interesting design challenge.
For a larger criticism of that system is that, so what I ended up doing, and I know people just were like, oh, that's kind of dumb, is like when I would get up to a boss fight, I would press assess, and then I would see what it was, I would quit and start again, and then keep assess stuff. Yeah, because it was just, because at a certain point I was saying to myself, there's literally no information that I can intuit for these really fun combat challenges, except getting there and then going, oh, I literally have nothing that equips me.
And it's a universal game design problem.
No, it actually isn't. I wish there are some RPGs where they have sort of an investigation system where it's just like, oh,
similar to like The Witcher.
I know that, basically The Witcher, where it's just like, okay, you
there's a way to find out
fully, but you'll know, like, so for example, I guess a really good example would be the graveyard with where what's his name, Elagor's the boss, and how most the ghosts and everything were all ice. So I had a ice-based, ice focused,
Right.
group. So when I got up to him, I was pretty much okay, and I think I beat it. Like I saw that there was the weakness to arrow, like when he's in the air, and I was like, oh, I missed that, whatever, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I was prepared for that battle.
Right.
However, there's definitely areas where a boss may be a complete different element, or there may be a lot of varying elements, which is
and
fine.
that's
However,
and that's actually like almost like
yeah.
campaign design, right?
Yeah.
Like that's addressing the problem that I'm talking about by saying, let's make it so that when you enter a new area, the initial encounters reset you in a certain way. But there is a sort of mixed problem though, because there were on normal difficulty that didn't happen very much, because I would go into a new area and it wasn't hard enough to make me go, oh shit, let me redo everything, right?
But I'm still, sort of critical of that path in the sense of there isn't anything to be into it of like, there's no chatter saying, oh man, I went out there, for all the chatter they have in the story that people love. There was nothing that really talked about in the gameplay
it's
sense.
A passive way to guide the player's hand, right?
Yeah.
Versus other ways, like the game that I won't ever not talk about, Division 2. Each faction has different characteristics. So if you feel like for that day playing on heroic and specifically targeting hyenas, you might have a loadout for that. You can't switch loadouts in the middle of battle. You can't, do that sort of stuff. So complications can arise. But that's that's a different way to solve that problem, which is I really do think most games face this problem if they're sufficiently complex of, I don't know what I'm about to fight, so I can't prepare for it.
Yes.
And restarting a battle and doing that thing is just annoying.
Sure. I honestly didn't share a lot of that experience. I understand where you guys are coming from, but for the majority of my playthrough, like from beginning to end, I kept a healthy amount of magic materia on me. Of course there are situations like when I first fought the Hell House and you just went in there with whatever you've got on, and then it's like, hey, guess what? He's weak to everything at certain points. I actually think the Hell House is an excellent boss fight, because that's the first fight that teaches you not to mash the buttons. If you mash the buttons during the Hell House fight, you get fucked up.
And in hard mode, it actually becomes another one of those battles that teaches you. That's why, Zabi, in a sense, I want you to go a little bit further, because one of the failures
forward to
Well, your criticisms are right in the sense that most of the battles are, let's just make everything stronger and faster. And else they actually go to the option of like, we're not making it stronger and faster. We're going to do something else differently. And there's some bosses that they do that with, but they don't do it a lot.
The complexity is there, and something that I want to end my contribution to the hard mode discussion on is like, I still don't like that they didn't give me that option from the outset and let me choose for myself like a fucking adult. Like, I would have started the game on hard. I would have probably enjoyed the fight with the scorpion motherfucker, right? But the thing that's worth acknowledging, and I understand this, is that scorpion fight on hard is impossible without carrying over the materia from your normal playthrough. So like, there needs to be an intermediate thing in my mind, and I just want, because I didn't do, there's a lot of optional shit that I passed on because I was like, the combat is insufficiently interesting for me to waste time on this shit. Like the optional battle arena fights and the optional simulator fights. I was just like, I don't care.
Okay. Well, Matt plus, anything before we move on to music, or anybody else?
When it came to the combat, I had a lot of the same things, but I would say that the little add-ons and optional stuff really made regular combat a lot easier and a lot more intuitive. The funny thing, I remember you guys were like, "Oh, I'm trying to assess enemies ahead of time." I would have something click in the back of my head, like, "Oh, I remember this fight," and then I just changed the material beforehand because I was like, "Oh,
I did that too.
That's the other thing. It's like prior knowledge.
I did that too, which speaks to the dimension of the game of like, how does it actually hold up standalone? And I don't know, but like, that's a cudgel, right? That's a crutch. that
Yeah.
the design
I-
arguably
it
depended on
definitely
that.
would have been, some of those fights definitely would have been a lot harder had I not known, like specifically.
I don't know. I
Corneo's
feel
pet-
like that reminds me of like an element of Resident Evil 2 when a part of that game is just having the prior knowledge of your previous run through.
Because this is a series, and like the some of the enemies that are classic to FF. Not even the past FF7, just FF in general. Like,
Right.
oh, that mechanical thing. It's weak to thunder. Of
It's
course
gotta
it
be
is.
weak to thunder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
but I
something
can,
like that.
but I differentiate between my experience and my critique. Like
Mhm.
my experience of the game was fine, partly because
okay,
I
fair
benefit from having played the original and playing other Final Fantasies and so on.
Mhm.
But
that legacy knowledge.
I always
Yeah.
like, at the very least, to critique things from a position of what if someone who has never played a video game played this?
Same
What would
here.
that be
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
And there's
Yeah.
some things that, like, you know, yeah, obviously we assume you know how to fucking navigate a controller. Sometimes tutorials are irritating in that regard, but there are solutions for those things. But specifically, this game flat out to maybe lead into more like story conversation, how it like leads, how it holds up against the classic. This game is bad, in my opinion, for someone who did not play the original. It's actually like the combat's good. The combat's good. The story is nonsensical and bad.
Okay.
Even though I found it interesting.
Yeah. Well,
I
hardcore
wouldn't
disagree with you.
entirely say that.
Yeah. Before we jump into story though, let's just hit music real quick, because I know once we go down story,
I mean, the music is
Rabbit
so
hole.
integrated into the story. You know?
that's it. But I really enjoyed the music. I liked the remixes too. Most of the songs I do like, sort of like electric inspired remixes, and some of the original tracks as well. I think my favorite track is, I'm pretty sure this is the first time they play it when you're on the second reactor run, and you guys are running through the tunnel. That theme, it's repeated. That song that's very FF13 as well.
They
It's
treated
really,
the
really
whole original soundtrack with a lot of respect, and
Yeah.
it's very nice to hear almost too much respect.
And
in my
even
opinion.
the mixing,
Interesting.
even the mixing and the timing. Like, I don't know if you guys remember the Genova battle. How
Oh my
it's
god,
not the Genova
I get chills
battle.
thinking about it.
Well,
But like
the thing that's the remixing of the music is probably one of the best ways in which they pay homage but also fuck with your expectations. So like the game literally starts with Sephiroth's theme as far as what music kicks the game off. It does not start with the imagery or the music that you're used to. It immediately starts with that. And if you're someone who played the original,
played the
doesn't
original,
follow game development and the new stories and everything, like, that immediately communicates like, this is a little different. And probably my favorite first detail that I was just like, ooh, okay, that's different and interesting, was Aerith in the original. She's in the alleyway and she looks over to the side. Right. And it's not even necessarily clear, partly because of the graphical limitations, like what startled her or if she's startled or whatever.
She walks
in the remake,
confidently out in the original, she walks confidently out into the street. In this one, you're correct. She turns to the side and she's like, whoa, she gets
she's
scared
just like,
by
what
it.
was that? And the music does like a little note again of reintroducing Sephiroth's theme. And it's just like, oh, was she always aware of this shit in the original? I don't think she was.
No. Well, I mean, what we'll get into, that this may not be the same FF that we played many years ago. But yeah, the themes are quite fantastic. And the musical themes are fantastic. And like, you know, at different parts of the story, they'll like remix it, or they'll make a new spin on it, or it'll be like a slow version. Or Hip Hop Chocobo, everybody's favorite FF song.
Oh my god, I
Great
can't stand that song, man. I can't do it.
Yeah,
Can't even pretend to like it.
Got a nice ring to it.
Shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
Yeah. I mean, at the end, I was just like, all right, enough of Hip Hop Chocobo.
But that was like being blown away by Walmart, and then you end up in Walmart for 4 hours, and you're just like,
hey,
oh, God.
the song at the Honeybee Inn was great too. Like both songs, the first part and the second part, like
pretty good,
It was like really good.
Most of the Honeybee Inn was just really good.
Great
audio production. Upon what I was talking about earlier, I feel like they treated it with like too much respect, because a lot of so what they did was they made the OST for this game much more like cinematic and ambient rather than individual tracks that stand out. So like when you go back and you play FF7, which I did like a couple of years before this game came out, like each track is like distinct and separated from each other, right? And that's just, you know, limitation of the hardware at the time. And you know, you go into a battle, you get battle music. You go to a boss fight, you get boss fight music. And so that's what makes those things stick in your brain. It's nice to hear all that stuff come back, and it's nice to hear it come back in a way that it swells with the action, right? So the music like lends a lot of the emotional weight to what's going on.
So I think
it's just a shame to hear those themes kind of washed out sometimes, like because like I feel like Sephiroth's song, sorry to cut you off, Sephiroth's song is a little too orchestrated. I feel like they try to like inject this feeling of grandiosity into a lot of
so what you're getting into, I think, is that there's a difference in how music was produced back then versus how game music is produced now. Now it's far more intentionally crafted for what is happening on the screen and what is being played.
Right.
It might actually sound different if they put out original soundtracks. You might actually like them. But another dimension of what you're talking about is how catchy something is and how much you end up like remembering it over time is not a function of how dramatically impactful it is at all. Like Mario's music and other kinds of classic game music, they happen to be extremely catchy and memorable for reasons that are a combination of technical limitation, but also just the fact that like simple harmonies and simple rhythms and things just literally stick in your mind better. Why does Jurassic Park and Star Wars music stick in your head, and the music of most blockbusters doesn't? Like the Marvel movies, I can't remember music from Marvel movies. It serves the action, it serves the images.
It's connected to the whole
and one could make the argument, well, you've seen Star Wars, and it's like, well, we've had sort of the same Marvel themes since this, you know, cinematic universe has come up. So you could make that argument, but you're right. The blaring of Star Wars is
they do
iconic.
actually like do very intelligent work with musical themes in the Marvel universe, but there is no singular, obvious, memorable
I think that's
Captain
different
America
for this game,
theme or whatever.
I think that's different for Remake because there are certain very specific songs that play during like the vast majority of the game, like the battle theme. Every time you enter into battle, it's the same song. I would like to get somebody's perspective who hasn't like played the original 7 and see how they feel about the music in this game. I want to get that fresh perspective because having the prior knowledge of these tracks also like influences, you know, how
it's literally impossible to not bring our perspective into it as people who have played the original. Like a good example of something that like is just maybe an awkward joke for someone who has no foreknowledge is Barrett going da, 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 da. That made me smile like so hard pretty much every time he did it. And it still probably works in terms of just like, this dude's weird and he celebrates his victories by doing that.
Well,
okay.
If we're going to talk a little bit about plot, I mean, hey man.
Oh no, we're there.
Yeah, I think they did a great job with the characters for people who haven't played the original game.
Hold on, Matt plus.
I wanted to add one more thing about the music. I love how they added it just into the background in a very creative way, and how you find the music. It was like, oh man,
yes, that's
right. In the background on somebody's radio.
You're
The
right.
bad guy just happened to be playing music.
The
quest, music quest
post fall of Sector 7.
Yes, where you
to cheer people up by finding the music. Was the most wholesome shit I've ever seen.
It's all in the hips.
I fucking love it.
Yeah, that old man dancing, that mocap is fantastic.
Yeah. Also, those kids were adorable.
Yeah, that kid is adorable, and it was a good relationship that they built with her over time because she's also the little girl who gives you the quest to find her fucking kitties.
In the beginning.
And those cats are like, this motherfucker with the big ass sword, fuck that. I'm running.
And Aerith saves her during the fall of Sector 7.
Yeah.
So let's if we're done with music, let's launch into the story.
Yes.
And 85% of it is excellent.
Yeah, 85. I'll get 85, 90. Yeah, I'll give that. Yeah.
So I like to focus on a negative, so I'm going to hold off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anyway, the characters are excellent. There are the interactions between them during combat, post combat.
Mhm.
Aerith's become like this weird, quirky girl now, which is excellent. Now she's not just like this kind of like holier than thou savior figure. You know,
she wasn't in the original.
It's hard to say. I kind of want to replay.
I've been listening to a lot, and you know, I think we're not remembering
correctly.
Aerith not remembering
recently.
correctly, not remembering FF7. Remember, because Aerith has been in things going for. She's been in, you know, Final Fantasy, other stuff. Hearts and
okay.
When
plus
you
I was
go
like,
back,
plus I was like 12.
I'm remembering
my impression of Aerith in the original Final Fantasy was probably like.
I remembered her to be. I
remember
her to be silly and funny, like just from the church and how, you know, Cloud was being very serious, and she's just like prancing around in those in those blocky, you know, polygons and laughing at him and saying, "Oh, you're so serious." I always remembered her as serious, but I think because of her, you know, unfortunate end, we only remember sort of the ending of her arc of like, oh yeah, I have a job to do.
It was the longest woman in a refrigerator of all time. So what I love about Aerith is they did a pretty good job, despite the fact that I'm about to talk about the elements of the game that I don't think work. They did a pretty good job of using her as a vehicle for
the change,
the elements of fantasy that are in the game. Yes. So like she always throughout the game did a good job of conveying a certain sense of like, I know about things that are happening on a global scale that if I tell people, they will think that I am fucking insane. And I love that. And immediately, even as someone who played the classic, you're just like, oh, okay, she's like sensitive. We know that she's sensitive to planet energy and all that kind of shit as an ancient. So it makes a sense even from our perspective. But then they introduce it with her where like there's such a weight due to the music and the presentation and everything of that moment, those moments where she's standing in front of a fucking portal and all these ghosts are around and everyone's a little bit like, what the hell's going on? And she just kind of stands there and confidently goes like, if we step through this, everything will change. And you get this sense of gravity from her that's fucking impressive. And it's really well written and performed because she manages to balance that with levity. It's really well done.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think we have to just state going forward is that, you know, when this game was announced, you know, we didn't know that they meant remake in every sense of the word. You know, this isn't a copy and paste and add on. They're actually remaking the story. So, you know, along with the recognized story. I mean, it's not a spoiler warning. This is what it is. Along with
played it, man.
Along with
I'm ready to launch into all that shit.
I mean, like it'll be on the tags. I mean, if this says, you know, FF7 post-mortem, there's spoilers.
Timestamp.
Yeah, there are plot ghosts you know, this is a
literal plot ghosts.
Literal.
My favorite interpretation is that they are literal
stand-ins.
They're literal stand-ins for the fandom.
Yep,
they are. Yes,
that's
100% what they are. Yeah.
So just to sort of recap and, you know, just make it clear, in this game, whenever something sort of significant happens, these whispers, as they call them, sort of interfere.
Something that does not line up with the original.
Prevent the characters from performing certain actions or ensuring that characters are in certain places at certain times.
So that they either die, stay alive, or perform the plot as it was in the original.
Do you guys think that Wedge is dead? I'm not sure.
I don't think he is.
I think I don't think Wedge is dead, considering they kept
you guys
Biggs
didn't watch
alive.
after credits, did you?
After credits?
He's not dead.
Oh, he's in the after credits?
He's not dead. Yeah,
I fucking hate it when people expect us to watch that shit.
Thank Matt Plus. No. You know what it is? You know what it is, Matt Plus? It's so funny. I've been listening to so much stuff about it where it seems like nobody did, and they actually did sort of tell. Like in my mind, I was like, wait a second. They showed him like they showed him like walking with people or something like that, or walking back to the set, and I was like, oh yeah, he's alive. Yeah, Wedge and
Such
Biggs
a
are alive.
dick move.
And a great theory is that also
that was something that was
alive.
handled with bad gravity.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesse's alive
Jesse,
too?
no. There's a theory that she is
Theory.
alive.
Yeah, I don't know if
she took this opportunity to sneak into the golden saucer. And she's an actress.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I mean, that
I can see them
has a lot to do
sneaking
with the
that.
ending, huh?
I can see them sneaking that into things where like because we've seen the power that this has, right? Like probably one of the more telling moments in the story in terms of actually mapping out what the fuck is going on internally, like from an internal logic perspective, because you have all this crap about destiny and all this stuff, and that maps onto a sort of postmodern fourth wall breaking interpretation of like the fandom and all that kind of stuff.
The fandom's expectations of what the game is going to be, or like what they want it to be.
Which I kind of like, but at the same time, I think that they like it's a little I'm losing my thought, but importantly, like when Barrett gets shanked,
sure,
it's a moment of like
crazy shit.
Did they just kill Barrett, right?
Flip that.
And then he just straight up gets like, and we literally just saw President Shinra get shanked and killed by Sephiroth, right? So
I like the gravity they added to that though, because before it was like, oh, the guy's dead. Wait, what?
President Shinra can go.
I mean, I remember that scene being quite sort of iconic in the sense of
it was
they're
iconic,
trying to get to this.
There are a few things. There are a few things about this story.
Wait, hold on. Who are we talking about? Shinra? President Shinra?
Yeah, President Shinra.
Yes, President Shinra.
Okay.
They added a lot more character to him in that last scene.
Yeah, that's true.
Added a lot more.
In the original, he's barely there, and it's really just a way to show off how badass Sephiroth is. That you walk into the office and the sword's
just
there.
see his sword on top of a man.
But I feel like that element of Sephiroth is missing now, and this is where the game suffers from.
Sephiroth is not scary.
Sephiroth is not scary, but. On the other hand, Sephiroth was always a manipulator, which we could talk about once we start talking about the ending. But for this particular scene, I feel like they took away like that eldritch horror element of Sephiroth. Because like
the whole not seeing him,
the
and
thing
then
you
seeing
see
his blood all
instead of
everywhere.
like that glowing purple goop that you walk past, it's a fucking trail of blood that leads right up to President Shinra, and it's
exactly.
It's terrifying.
In the remake, they introduced Sephiroth so early, which works in an interesting fashion. It's good in the sense that they don't pretend to hide the monster you already know as someone who has played the original. But again, from the perspective of a standalone game, from someone who does not know this story, it sucks. Sephiroth is confusing. You don't know why he's important. They do not show why he's scary or terrifying or whatever. He's just some weird god figure that's floating around.
He's the element that is kind of like the loose cannon, right? He's the element that they've injected into the game.
He's the Joker. I don't know, whatever.
He's time traveling Sephiroth, and that's what this whole game is about. He's manipulating the live stream to get them to do a whole bunch of
which tells me that Sephiroth will absolutely be in the next games. Which
of course
is gonna happen.
He's not dead.
Yeah, but like they're talking about remaking stuff, right? And how the story will not be what you expected it to be if you played the original, and that's good. They really need to step up their game with Sephiroth, though, because as a standalone game, he's just confusing, and I don't like it. The best parts about Sephiroth is how he plays with the expectations of people who have played the game before.
Yeah,
don't get me
he's
wrong,
a manipulator.
This game is a mega success, but I have the same critiques of Star Wars, recent Star Wars movies, where it's just like, Episode 7, if you haven't seen Episode 4, is fucking stupid.
It is. It misses a lot of details.
And I don't want this game, because I like it, to fall to the same fate. Apparently my timer went off, so I don't know if Zoom is going to kick us at some point. I don't know.
I mean, it still says recording on my end.
It does.
Yeah.
Still says recording.
I'll do some quick Googling. Please talk, guys.
What... Can we talk about the ending, please?
Yeah, get straight to that.
So I sincerely, my hope for the ending of the game is that we've talked about, how Sephiroth is kind of manipulating the player and the party like throughout the whole campaign, and that's evident if you play through the game again through hard mode. You pick up a lot more stuff about like the plot
it makes sense.
I just wish the plot ghosts weren't so heavy-handed. You know what I mean? Like literal plot ghosts. There's some nice connections I've seen made to like the expanded universe of Final Fantasy VII. Like we've seen the plot twist before. The three whispers that you fight in the last boss with Bahamut.
Yeah.
They're actually, you know, the 3 dudes from Advent Children.
Yeah.
I've seen people make the connections to those people.
What 3 dudes?
The 3 whispers. The big
Kadaj.
Kadaj, yeah, that's his name. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Because they wield the same weapons. And so
okay,
they think
so
like
that my
interpretation
of those 3 things that you fight at the end of the game is that they're actually representations of not Kadaj and so on. Because the descriptions are there's one who fights with a sword, one who fights barehanded, and one who fights with a gun. And my first association is, oh, this is us.
The party,
which I like, but they don't they don't sow enough seeds throughout the game to make that feel like an appropriate turn. And B, there's just not enough meat on the bone.
For sure.
Like
that's a valid
as a self-contained thing, I just don't like that, because my interpretation, but I'm doing a lot of work here that the game is not doing, is that there's some interpretation here where those forces was literally the party from the original Final Fantasy trying to return everything to order, and we literally just killed them. And now we are free from the shackles of that interpretation being correct in any fashion. And that is simultaneously, that's very interesting for 2 reasons. One is a good one, one is a bad one. The good one is, if we're free of those shackles, maybe Eris can live.
Yeah.
And 2 is...
This leads into my hope. Continue what you're going to say,
And 2 is, if we're free from these shackles, this might be Sephiroth's plan, because now he doesn't have to die.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's defy destiny together, Cloud.
Exactly.
That's
a great moment where it's just like,
come on, 7 seconds until the end.
Oh, that's reminding
enough time for you.
us. That's reminding us that. Oh yeah. Also, like, what is it with the significance of numbers in like Japanese culture? Because that was stupid as a line.
That was weird.
That landed stupid.
The 7 seconds to the end thing. I think that's until
it's a Square
hits,
Enix
right?
thing, man. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah.
There was a couple of interpretations. There was on the 7 seconds before meteor hits, and also it took 7 seconds, that cutscene in the cutscene where Sephiroth killed Eris. That's been floating around, saying like he's referring to those. That's why Cloud is just
grasping at straws.
That's
grasping at straws. How do you measure how long the scene was?
Somebody went on and they looked at it. That's what.
I see.
This has been researched.
There's arguments about the pyramids being done with golden ratio, but that's actually because they have problems with measuring exactly how, like, what the lengths are. Anyway, it's arguable. The point that I wanted to make is this is actually just Square Enix being very fappy about numbers. They did this with Final Fantasy 13, where there were 13s everywhere, and it's just like,
oh yeah,
are you guys trying to write the next Bible with like the significance of numerology that's going on here? Like, I don't, because that's fucking annoying as far as I'm concerned.
I think that you're reading way too much into.
No, I think they want us to there's like the game's Final Fantasy
maybe I'm immune to that. I just look at it and go, oh, that's cute. They're trying to make 7 significant. I get it.
Yeah.
I
guess the thing for me is
Final Fantasy 7, so we're gonna put 7 in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then
so
that's
like,
literally
immersion
how
is
it was
key.
interpreted.
Yeah,
I really want to be like internally in that universe, and when they do that, it might be cute, but it also reminds me that my name is Xavier Matos and I live on Earth, and I don't want to remember that because I'm in quarantine, motherfucker.
I gotta say though, I like how
That's
they
not FF's fault. Damn it.
Change the end to make it more dramatic and interesting, and
that was the problem that they had,
because it could have ended like I was telling people, like, how are they gonna end it? It could end like Lord of the Rings. Hey guys, we're out of here.
We're walking. Yeah.
And it did, but they did introduce some epicness.
Well, so my hope for the future of this is, so they've now opened up the possibility for, oh, hey, maybe Earth's alive, maybe Zack's alive in some alternate timeline, right?
That feels essentially confirmed to me. Zack is alive.
There are certain events that need to take place in the Final Fantasy timeline to preserve how the game's going to go, right? And I don't think that Square is going to be so irreverent as to change the story altogether. My hope is that this is all a misdirection for Eris to die. I sincerely hope.
I'm not.
I want
Look,
the pain.
Aerith,
I want that
can die.
heartache.
Look, Aerith can die. Aerith can die, and it can be a sad moment about how we're failing, to like destroy Destiny or whatever, because that's a theme that they're playing with, and that's fine. They can have that happen, but I'm going to be playing part 2 very critically, and I'm going to be playing part 2 thinking to myself, like, what happened in the original and what's happening now, and how are they going to either keep it to the Destiny or not keep it to the Destiny? And to be clear, because of how that juxtaposes fandom versus originality versus this concept of Destiny, something that Final Fantasies have done in the past, and I really want them to do here, is to play with the idea that when someone tells you that something is destined to happen, and they are essentially a god, what you do is you gather your friends and you murder God. That's literally what Final Fantasy
That's
13
Final Fantasy.
is.
Yep.
That's what Final Fantasy 13 is. And if you take that and you map it onto Final Fantasy 7, it would be incredibly disappointing to me if the same people live and die, if like at the end of all, you know, it's said and done, if the same major events happen in the same way roughly, because you have a universe of characters to play with, and like Marvel's been getting away with having a billion timelines for ages now, and they've done it to one extreme. If they just try to beat this back into like the same thing and try to like, if the story ends up being like you can't fight Destiny, I don't like it.
Well, I mean, I think they've already sprinkled some breadcrumbs in the sense of, you know, the established ending of FF7, which we all up until now thought was like at least a decent ending, was the scene where Red 13's child is running through the fields. And you sort of get that this is way past, you know that his species
Isn't there an interview with the original director that says that the end of Final Fantasy 7, like the original end of Final Fantasy 7, is a place like devoid of humans, like human are extinct?
But in a sense of like, I mean, at least for me, I didn't think that was a bad ending, because you already knew that Red 13's kind lived for centuries. Like
and it
so it was just like,
oh,
this could be, you know, hundreds and hundreds of years in the future.
It reminds me of the positive cathartic aspect of the movie and book. I forgot the fucking name. God damn it. But the movie that has like 6 main characters and takes place in 6 different timelines, and it was directed by the Wachowskis and edited by them, and it was based on a book by some other guy.
Cloud Atlas.
Cloud Atlas. I love that movie. I'm bad with titles. So it reminds me of the good cathartic parts of Cloud Atlas, because a lot of what that movie is about is making you face the fact that these characters who you love by the end of the movie, whose lives took place hundreds of years before you, and the characters who you love, whose story takes place centuries later, like, it shows the insignificance that of all of our lives over time, right? And in a way that FF7 is playing with that by introing with Red 13 and showing a Midgar that is completely, you know, and if that's canon, like if that's like, you know, godly canon and cannot be fucked with, because fandoms and fanboys, then like it doesn't matter if we kill Sephiroth, humans will die. How do they die? Is that interesting? Is that a good story to tell?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think my point about that was to note that the game is making a statement that that original ending is bad. So
really, I don't know if I would take that.
I mean, he literally says, "This is what happens when we fail. If we fail."
Well, that's
contextualized with several.
That's what happens
scenes.
if we fail today.
Yes, and what they succeeded to do was to defeat Destiny, right?
Defeat the plot ghost. Yes.
But you're right that like if you contextualize it with the flashback of Red 13, then the original ending is bad and we have to defeat it, right?
Yeah.
But if you think of all the happy things and the fact that you defeated Sephiroth, then cool. I highly doubt that the game is gonna like rock solid go in the direction of, you know, we're gonna be super happy now about everything, right? We're gonna defeat Shinra really early, and then everyone's gonna hold hands and Sephiroth's just gonna go away. No, it's gonna be a struggle. But what I like about that contextualization as like this is what victory is that victory actually is defeating Destiny. The same way that in 13, I like the fact that victory is murdering God because he said that you have to die.
Yeah. Interesting things to still think about.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, we're still recording. I don't know how the fuck Zoom works or what, but that's That's pretty much all I gotta say about the ending and stuff.
Any want to wrap it up, or I mean, wrap up the ending? Want to talk about sort of the future, where you think they'll go from here?
Yeah.
I look forward to playing more on hard.
One thing I did want to say was I hope that the linearity of this game that so reflects the first 5 hours of the first game.
First 90% of the original. Is
yeah.
I was gonna say.
Because even walking onto the world map still gave you a sense of freedom.
I was gonna say exactly. Feeling is different.
From reality, of course. Yes.
Yeah.
But what I don't want them to necessarily take the route of Final Fantasy 15 with the second one. Like I don't want to drive around for a million years to visit like one town that looks like shit.
Yeah. So you have two different versions between the classic FF7 and Final Fantasy 15. You have two different versions of faux epicness. In Final Fantasy 7, you have a big open world, but what that actually means in practice is you could maybe do some optional things, and you have to walk 2 minutes to get there.
Yes.
That's something. It creates a feeling, but it's, in terms of flowcharting that out, right?
Yeah.
You have one other optional thing, and then in the classic FF7 you optionally can do all these arena fights. It doesn't take you 2 minutes to walk there, but like from a flowchart perspective they're similar-ish. And then with FF15 you have, here's this big epic world and whatnot, and it might be immersive, right? But in terms of
linear.
Being tactically challenged, there's not a lot happening. There's a shitload of non-combat in FF15.
Yeah.
I wasn't even like super immersed, to be honest, when I was playing FF15.
Oh, neither was I.
I played like 34 hours of that game, and I have maybe one town like burned into my mind. Like the rest of it is just road and like
blur.
Forest.
I agree with you. I'm just trying to channel and play devil's advocate with the people that I've heard who do like it.
I like 15, but they have issues similar to the spacing of all that stuff.
I think a happy medium for me would be something along the lines of like The Witcher 2, in the sense of there would be maybe, and sort of what they did, where there would be like big story hubs or action hubs, and then you wouldn't have an overworld, or maybe if you had an overworld, it would be like drive from point A to point B, or maybe just a map, almost like it may be a FF10 Spira.
Yeah, sure.
In the sense of like, and FF10 2, where I don't know if you remember the changes.
There was a lot of side missions and stuff on like.
No. I mean the overworld, in the
overworld.
You can fly your plane to place. Each place was an environment.
Right.
If you walked from environment end to environment end, it led you to the next environment.
That's
so like from Xanarkand Plains, you like head to the Underlands,
there's
something like that.
There's some details that some people really care about that I don't. Like having all of the areas be physically stitched together is a lot of fucking work, and I don't need it. I really don't. But I understand some people that makes a huge impact in how much they like the game. Which
I know I would like
things
that.
Things like Skyrim make their heads explode.
In service of like the game, like remembering what 7 was and what it is now. Of like, okay, do we really want a new FF7 where we have an open world where there's randomized monsters, where it's a big open space of nothingness, just to say, oh, it's the world again? That's what I'm making. That's my point. I wasn't making it a point of like, like my personal chase of just to sort of.
There's some basic things in like 15, for example, that like you can imagine, not that they're easy, but that you can imagine solving key problems, right? So think about the fact that I didn't give a shit about manually upgrading my weapons. They put in a shortcut to auto upgrade weapons. When you're talking about Final Fantasy 15, there's sort of fast travel, but like there's no happy middle ground between, oh my god, look how expansive the world is, but also I'm fucking bored and I want to hurry up and do some fights, right? Like they could try to make more elegant solutions to that stuff. And I think that I don't want big expansive open world for the next Final Fantasy VII remake, but I do think that they need to clean up the balance between faux epicness and actual like immersion and production values, because this game still has the lowest fucking quality textures I've ever seen on a PS4.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that.
I kind of have a theory.
You know what's up with that?
What's up with that is
the PS5 is coming out in 8 months after this game.
What a damn shame.
in a way, you've been
not
seeing
really,
this.
because in 8 months we'll all have PS5s.
PS5s,
and
I
we'll
know.
put in FF7, and we won't.
I will
And
not pay for this
it'll
game
have
twice.
achieved its final form. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I will
no,
not
that's
pay
it.
for this game twice. Like,
Unfortunately, it's
principle.
Square Enix, so they're not going to be a part of whatever, smart delivery. I know PlayStation 5 hasn't announced anything like that yet, but whatever,
Yeah,
it's
I
Square
like
Enix. Whatever
Xbox's
hopes
idea
you
for
think you're
smart
not going to be
delivery.
paying extra for
Absolutely,
Square
yeah,
Enix
no,
games.
they repackage everything and want you to pay for it 5 billion times, and it's very irritating.
Exactly.
You see this trend actually where like some developers are being smart about it, and I don't want to like make broad generalizations per se, but like American developers appear to me to be better technical engineers than a lot of Japanese developers. In particular, games like The Division, you've talked about how there's a shitload of pop-in for the textures. The level of detail pops in. That is 100% accurate. Yet, that is a game that deploys back to shitty hardware very well, and in a certain sense is being designed with the future of technology in mind, because it plays very well on PC. And if you take The Division 2 and you just put it on the PlayStation 5, that pop-in problem is probably going to get addressed. And similarly, FF7 is designed for the PS5, but not similarly. It does not elegantly scale. Those textures just stay shitty, period. And like, that's probably because they just took really good quality textures, and as part of their pipeline, they were like, we cannot get this to work well and have a good frame rate in this environment without taking these textures and turning them into trash. Never mind level of like, I don't think there's any level of detail elegance in FF7's engine at all, from what I can tell.
Yeah. One other thing, they need to address aerial combat in the next game.
Yes. Oh my god.
Aerial combat fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Like, how did they get grounded combat so right? And aerial combat is awful. It just feels terrible.
They need to borrow liberally from Final Fantasy Dissidia, actually.
Ooh, yeah, and I'm surprised that they didn't. They took a whole bunch of their moves that they created for them from Dissidia.
I think a big part of it is
there are clear design lessons from there.
Dissidia is just fantasy, whatever, do whatever the fuck you want.
Quiet combat.
The moment that you have combat in FF7 with a serious story where people are flying around, you have a problem. I actually already have a problem with the internal logic of the power elements in FF7 Remake, because early on in the game, Cloud jumps really high.
Yeah.
And Jesse's like, cool. And then later on in the games, it's a point that there's some struggle to get around some obstacle, and I'm just like, can't this dude
how many times can you pull each other off
up
on a ledge? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's no tension, and like there's arguments to be had for like how it works and all that stuff, but I already am doing too much mental work. Like, don't fuck around with that in my mind. Like, I need a consistent. I
absolutely understand where you're coming from. My brain just shuts off.
I get that, and I'm
like, they help each other.
I don't believe that ludonarrative dissonance can have much of a justification. Like you can't just go, it's a game, that's a gameplay, that's the story. Like, I actually want at least a design reason why Phoenix Downs exist. And when someone gets impaled, I can't use the Phoenix Down. Okay, that I can deal with. But seeing in a cutscene Cloud pull out a 20-foot jump height because he feels like it and he's in danger, and then being in combat and just being like, why can't I fly? Like, that genuinely bothers me.
Anime.
Why can't I fly?
Anime's anime.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well,
all right, man.
If that is it, I think we can wrap up here. As I think you all heard, we generally had a positive sort of reaction to the game.
We gripe because we love.
Future. Yeah.
6 out of 10.
Not without its criticisms.
You can suck my cock.
But
you're all the way in Jersey. I gotta drive. All right, I'm done.
I'm waiting.
We've got to wrap it up. We've got to wrap up today's.
Mikey has shit to do.
Yes. You can always find us on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
Bye.
Later.